Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the channel of Nazione Futura. We had the great pleasure of having here in the Nazione Futura headquarters former Prime Minister of Poland and the President of the ECR party. Welcome to Italy, President Morawiecki.
Welcome, I might say welcome back, and thanks for having me.
It is always a great pleasure, especially during these hard times. We need strong leadership. I would like to begin this interview with some insights. Insights from Cluj, the last event of the ECR party, the economic forum. What are the most relevant aspects that you wanted to underline from this experience?
We have been concentrating in Cluj-Napoca in Romania within the ECR party on how to eliminate red tape, how to increase competitiveness of the whole of Europe. What needs to be done for us, the European nations, European member states of the European Union, to increase our innovativeness and competitiveness. And there were plethora of different issues, but one and most important probably was energy cost. And why energy costs are so high, what to do to reduce them. I understand you have closed your nuclear power plants in the past because of Chernobyl and Fukushima. In the case of Poland, we do not have nuclear power plants, yet this is this stabilizing source of energy, which is not so easy to replace. We have coal, and now with the Green Deal policy, both Italy and Poland, we are very badly punished. The energy cost is the highest in Italy and in Poland across the whole of Europe, and Europe is 2-3 times higher cost of energy than the United States and China.
About the United States of America, we are seeing also in this geopolitical exchequer some difficulties also of dialogue between old allies, because Italy and Poland especially shares this kind of attitude with the United States to be like a sort of transatlantic bridge. How can we recover this space also of friendship with the United States, especially during the Trump era and also looking for the future?
A very important question. Well, like with all the respect to President Trump, the United States and the policy of White House was before President Trump and will be after President Trump as well. And I just hope that there will be enough of forces within the European Union and within the United States to keep the transatlantic course, because this course is critically important in the times of upheaval, times of fracture for us, for Italy, and for the whole of Europe. I have presented a concept of economic NATO. And by this I mean that within the NATO organization, we can build a kind of free trade zone, free trade association, free trade agreement. Not a customs union, this would be one bridge too far, most likely, but I can imagine that a free trade agreement between most of the countries, if not all of the countries of NATO, would be a good and viable concept. In the veins of the United States, there is this free trade and free movement of goods and free market ideas. Hence, I believe that after a couple of years of frictions between us and the United States, they will come to a conclusion that it's better to form a big alliance, a big platform for trade for the entire NATO countries. And thanks to this, we could be dominating the entire globe in terms of trade, in terms of norms, standards, security standards, platforms, digital platforms, and so on. So I see many advantages and not too many disadvantages of such a concept.
We are seeing that we are entering into a multipolar scenario for the geopolitical relations, especially we called also a number of our newspaper, Nazione Futura, the big return of the empires, because we are seeing China, Russia, India and the United States that are they are building up their sphere of expansion, of course, but also of influence. And the role of Europe. It's always the same. It's like a political dwarf. How can we turn Europe into a political giant? What is the real attitude of a strong European Union in that way?
I think that to be a political giant, you need very strong economy and very strong defense system. And in Europe, we have been deciding not to have strong defense over the predecessing 3 decades, and now we have to catch up very quickly. We will never be a political giant superpower without those 2 factors. And the economy in Europe is in stagnation for the last 2 decades, and the last decade in particular, it is stagnating. The defense system is heavily relying on how much expenditures you can dedicate for military and for defense systems. And Europe has a very big lesson to the homework to do right now. And these are my 2 major suggestions for the whole of Europe. And in the discussion between should Europe be a super state, federal state, or a set of sovereign nations, sovereign states, I'm definitely for the latter, because I do not believe that any artificial construct like the centralized, federalized European Union can bring positive fruits. I think that this is a way to nowhere. One-size-fits-all ideology is not a good proposition for the whole of Europe. I believe that we need to focus on increasing productivity and hence competitiveness of the European Union. This will bring more taxes to our budgets, and thanks to these taxes we will be able to invest more in innovation, in defense, and in dual-use goods. And the name of the game in the world is exactly about these elements of power.
Which were the main mistakes of the European bureaucrats and elites during this I think, century after the Fukuyama theories of the end of history, when we thought that all the world will increase their competitiveness, friendships between countries, and this kind of attitude, messianic attitude to good. Which were the big mistakes of the European elites?
It's very rightly, sir, that you reverted back to the era of the beginning of transformation, when the Central European countries were liberated from communism thanks to John Paul II, Solidarity movement in Poland, Ronald Reagan and his policy, and so on. And in 1990, the Washington Consensus was dominating all over Europe, and including Poland and Central Europe as well. And we have started to disarm, and we have started a completely different set of policies since then. And it is very timely now to think about why the European Union, before being named, defined as European Union, was more successful than the European Union itself. We called our community back then the European Economic Community, of course, Italy being one of the 6 founding states and so on. And this was successful because it was focusing not on ideological and revolutionary projects like gender, woke, like Green Deal, like what to do with multicultural approach. Even euro currency, don't get offended, but I believe it was to some extent an ideological project, and this is one of the reasons why Italy is in stagnation for the last 20-25 years. Relatively speaking, of course, there is some growth, in particular in the times of Giorgia Meloni, but before that it wasn't looking very good. And I would refocus on those 4 major freedoms of the European Economic Community. So let's go back to EEC. To EEC 2.0 would be my proposition for the future. Let's concentrate on increasing competitiveness through actually eliminating non-tariff barriers presented by IMF as very high barriers for trade and for increasing competitiveness across Europe, for goods as quasi-tariffs of 45%, and for services a quasi-tariffs in the range of 100 to 110%. Huge obstacle for growth, huge obstacle for integrating our markets. So I believe that there is a chance for the European Union to increase our power through reverting back to the roots, to the European Economic Community. Let's actually realize the freedom to provide services, which is now so much fragmented and compartmentalized across Europe. And these would be my major suggestions for the policymakers in Brussels.
About the security, because we spoke a lot about economy, but some great thinkers like Bastiat told once that where are the tariffs, where are the economic difficulties, then will be the war. So we will pass not the march but the tanks. We saw that the war in Ukraine shaped a new world, restored the war into the old continent like no one did before. And we saw also from the Italian perspective, lots of analysts, there was a number of Limes, which I mean is the most important geopolitical newspaper in Italy, that called your Poland, the Morawiecki Poland, Imperial Poland, because you were like the golden diamond of the Eastern and Central Europe during this time of war. You had a great relation with the neighborhoods, but also with the United States of America. You had a pragmatic approach with the war in Ukraine, also welcoming refugees and helping the economy of Poland to not bring down by the problem related to the agricultural market linked to the war. How can we solve this problem of the war in Ukraine? Because it has been 4 years of conflicts, death, and difficulties also to the eastern borders.
That's correct. Thank you for those kind words. Well, first of all, to your comment about Bastiat, yes, it's really tanks or trade, even if at the times of Bastiat there were no tanks, but we know what this parallel means. And hence my concept of the economic NATO, because it expands trading capacities and capabilities across half of globe in terms of GDP at least, and this would bring more peace and stability. Now back to Ukraine. I think the highest credit should go back to Ukrainian soldiers and engineers who have been able to work out very modern solutions on the contemporary battlefield. And by this I mean drones in particular, anti-drone systems, and now they are working even on ballistic missiles. And Russians know this, the Kremlin knows this, and this means that I believe that peace can only be achieved through strength. Si vis pacem para bellum. If Russians see that the Ukrainians are serious about defending their sovereignty, their territory, and they have the capacity to do this, also thanks to the support of the whole of Europe and the United States weapon as well, but they have the guts and stamina to really defend their sovereignty. And the Russians see this determination. And I believe that only recently a real thinking towards, freezing this conflict or peace treaty started to appear on the surface in Moscow. And why? Not because of any threats from outside, not because of sanctions, even if sanction packages do work to some extent, but only to some extent, but also thanks to this determination of Ukraine and supporting countries to support, to continue this war. So I don't believe in any kind of goodwill from Vladimirovich Putin, but I do believe that there can be a critical mass in Moscow in favor of peace or freezing the conflict or whatever you call it. There is a frozen front line in Korea since 1953, so you can freeze this conflict hopefully for ages, and I see a good chance for stopping this war on the horizon.
We spoke about war, now we have to speak about security, because in Poland I think that is one of the main topics discussed in the mainstream sphere, but also in the universities and school. I have some colleagues that study this kind of military, cybersecurity, hybrid warfare linked to law. So these are specific universities and scholarships related to this kind of aspect. So in Poland, security matters. Why is not the same in the Western Europe, and how we can improve on this kind of aspect?
Well, I would be benign for Western Europe, and in particular those countries which are far, far to the west, like Portugal or Spain, or France with its nuclear power in the possession. I just believe that the threat is very much defined by geography, in particular. In the whole geopolitical context, I'm a kind of realist politician. And I'm not wondering that Portugal is not so much interested in the threats and jeopardies looming on the eastern flank of NATO. But equally, I do believe that we should be able to form an alliance on eastern flank with the Scandinavians, with Romania, with Ukraine, even with Turkey, which does not want Russia to be victorious. This is point number one. But point number two would be my suggestion to Italy, Germany, France, and other partners. Investing in defense can be a good business as well, because it is creating a good platform for making progress in innovative products. Satellites, radar screens, missiles, all of them are to some extent dual-use products. And the civilian sectors can benefit enormously thanks to this. I think that some part of our productivity growth, and the productivity growth in Poland during the time when I was Prime Minister was the fastest in Europe, was coming back to the fact that we were able to seal our budget, to repair our budget, and to earmark sufficient amount of money for dual-use programs. By the way, I wished it was such an ideal as I'm now describing. We have lots of other things to do in Poland, and delivery of those projects, execution of those projects, it's far from being perfect. But at least we were able to seal the budget, dedicate enough money for defense, and now appropriate utilization of this money is a challenge for us as well, but it's better to have this money and spend it appropriately rather than not to have this money. So different approach to budget first and then investing in dual-use products would be my suggestion.
The other front of the warfare and the hard power that we are seeing right now in the geopolitical exchequer is the Middle East, with all the aspects that we have just underlined about energetical sovereignty, supply chains, and the aspects related also to the environment. But the Middle East war has also underlined one aspect that is very dangerous for the democracy in the Western society. This kind of alliance between the Islamogauchism, they call it in French, so the radical left wing and the Islamic radical second generation of voters and citizens of European countries in Spain, in France, in Brussels, also in Belgium. I would like to ask you what is your opinion about that and how can we solve this kind of threat? Because it's an illogical and oxymorical alliance.
Absolutely, this is a very interesting point. I saw this statistics, those polls in France for Mr. Mélenchon, for instance, who is a leftist guy, and he would not get offended with this because this is what he calls himself. And yet 70% of Muslims, of French Muslims, is voting for far left. So this very strange alliance should be a wake-up call for all of us Europeans, and in particular I take it very seriously for me as a Polish politician. I don't know about you. I talked to Georgia about this, to your Prime Minister, but I think it's extremely important to really take it very seriously, because if you allow for enough of those legal, illegal Muslim migrants to settle, then they will try to destroy your culture. How they are going to do this? Like you see under Mr. Mélenchon in France, they will try to do this through attacking our religion, our faith, our traditions, our culture, because they know that through those attacks they will weaken our conservative republican values. And hence the right-wing Islamists, the right-wing politicians from this sphere are voting and are forming an alliance with far left and leftist politicians. A very dangerous phenomenon, and thanks for mentioning this, because it is not so well known in Poland. I don't know about Italy. I know about this in France, how it develops, and we have to be very vigilant about this.
Yes, there will be also the election in France in 2027, and this will mean also the results of this kind of alliance, because if Bardella will win, there will be other kind of France that will be majoritarian. On the other side, there will be a very great problem. President Morawiecki, the last question is related to Italy, of course. You spoke about Georgia. Italy and Poland has always shaped strong relations since the beginning. In your national anthem, there is Italy, and in our national anthem, there is Poland, of course. In your Heidelberg speech in 2023, you spoke about heritage, memory, and all the aspects related to the importance of defending it. What links mostly you to Giorgia Meloni during your years as Prime Minister? And what do you want to suggest also to Giorgia Meloni, considering that in 2027 there will be the election in Italy?
Well, when I was still Prime Minister, Georgia was already Prime Minister. We were working hand in glove in the context of the European Council, and the collaboration was excellent, even in those aspects where our interests were not ideally aligned with each other. It is because Georgia is a great leader, and not only for Italy, but I believe that Georgia is a great leader for the whole of Europe. And this is because she does understand the interest of Italy perfectly well, but at the same time, she does understand what is the interest of the European Union. And there is this positive feedback loop between the European Union and each member state of the European Union, as we know. So it's really worth emphasizing that the Republican forces in the European Council are common sense type of forces, and they should form alliances with each other. And yes, between Poland and Italy, there are so many friendship-related aspects of our collaboration that I'm very positive about the future. Let me mention one other geopolitical element which can connect us even stronger. It is the idea of building a kind of competition for the One Road, One Belt initiative called IMEC, India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor. And the ending of this could be Trieste port. And the emanation of this could be north of Trieste, which is Central Europe, which is the Three Seas Initiative, Intermarium, as we call it as well. And this is another dimension which can connect Gdańsk port with Trieste, and all the big emerging powers of India, Middle East can be connected through this route in terms of trade, in terms of capital flows, in terms of services flows of providing services, flows of goods, and so on. So I see also in this aspect a good platform of cooperation for Italy and Poland, and I believe that together with Georgia we'll be able to develop them into the future.
We say dziękuję, thank you to President of the
Grazie.
ECR Party, Mateusz Morawiecki, and we will see each other in the next interviews of Nazione Futura web TV channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.